My parents left me with cold pizza at my graduation while celebrating my sister's 10,000 followers. 3 years later, Dad went broke. I'm their landlord now. Hi, I'm Caleb. I'm 28, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's what it feels like to be made of glass. Not literally, of course, but that kind of invisible, fragile glass that people can stare right through, talk right past. The kind that, if it breaks, no one notices until they accidentally step on the pieces. I grew up in a frustratingly typical suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. My dad? He was a regional manager for a logistics company. His entire personality was basically his salary and his golf handicap. My mom, a chief receptionist at a fancy vet clinic, always carried herself like she owned the place. And then there was Chloe, my younger sister, 3 years my junior. In our house, she was the only divinity. I know how that sounds. Sibling rivalry, middle child syndrome. But this wasn't just some minor parental favoritism. This was a full-blown psychological monopoly. Chloe was the extrovert, the dancer, the cheerleader. She could charm the wallet right out of a stranger's pocket. Every room she entered became her stage, and my parents? They were her permanent front-row audience. Now, I wasn't neglected in a CPS call-worthy way. I had a roof, food, clothes. Emotionally, though, I was a piece of furniture. The first time I truly understood this, I was 8. Chloe turned 16 and got a brand new white Jeep Wrangler with a giant red bow. When I turned 16, I got a bus pass and a lecture about character building through a paper route. Chloe got a B in geometry, and suddenly, she had a $60 per hour private tutor. I made the high honor roll, and my dad grunted, glanced at the report card, and asked if I knew where the TV remote was. But the biggest slap in the face during my teenage years was getting into Ohio State. I was the first in my family to get into such a competitive school. I remember opening that acceptance letter in the kitchen, my hands shaking with a burst of genuine, pure pride. I carefully magneted it to the center of the fridge. 2 days later, I came downstairs to find it buried behind a glossy flyer for Chloe's upcoming dance recital. I asked my mom about it. She didn't even look up from her phone. Oh, that college thing. That's nice, Caleb. Don't forget to take out the trash. I didn't say a word, but a promise solidified in my chest. Once I had that diploma, I was going to build a life so enormous, so undeniable, they'd have to come see me. So, I worked 2 jobs through college, the university library and overnight data entry, just to avoid loans. I double majored in corporate finance and data analytics, sleeping 4 hours a night. For years of grinding myself into dust, and graduation day was supposed to be my resurrection. It was a cool, brisk Tuesday in May. I'd emailed the schedule 3 months in advance, texted them a week before, even printed a campus map, highlighted the parking garage, and attached it to the coffee maker. They had to be there. That morning, I ironed my cheap polyester gown, fixed my cap in the mirror, and felt a lump in my throat. Today, I thought, today they'll look at me with pride. At 1 p.m., I walked across that stage. I clasped the chancellor's hand, my knuckles white as I clutched my diploma cover. As I walked back to my seat, I scanned the vast crowd. I searched for my dad's ridiculous neon green polo, for my mom's big glasses. My heart pounded against my ribs. I made excuses in real time. Traffic. Parking was a nightmare. They're just seated higher up. But they weren't there. I drove home in my graduation gown, refusing to take it off. I wanted them to see it. As I turned onto our street, my stomach dropped. A queue of cars stretched down the block. For one excruciating, pitiful second, my heart leaped. A surprise party. They were just throwing me a surprise party instead of enduring the dull ceremony. I practically sprinted up the driveway, bursting through the front door. No one was inside. But I heard loud bass thumping from the backyard. I walked into the kitchen and I froze. Through the glass sliding doors, I could see about 30 people. There was a gigantic pink and gold balloon arch. And a banner stretched across the deck read, "Congrats, Chloe, on 10,000 followers." Chloe had just gotten her first minor brand sponsorship for her lifestyle blog. That was the big event. There I stood, suffocating in my graduation gown. My mom was pouring margaritas. My dad was manning the grill, laughing with Chloe's friends. No one looked toward the house. I looked down at the kitchen island. A greasy cardboard pizza box sat next to a stack of soiled napkins. A yellow post-it note, stuck to the lid, read, "Caleb, leftovers in the box. Chloe hit 10K and got sponsored. We're celebrating out back. Congrats on the graduation thing, Mom. Congrats on the graduation thing." I didn't cry. I didn't make a sound. My chest just closed. It was a tactile sensation, like a massive iron vault slamming shut. I took off my hat and gown, folded them neatly on the counter, and walked upstairs to my room. I packed 2 duffel bags. My grandfather, before he passed, was the only one who ever told me I was intelligent. I took a framed photo of him, my laptop, my finance textbooks, and my clothes. I walked out the front door. No goodbye. If a post-it note was enough for my college graduation, then utter silence was more than enough for my exit. They didn't even notice I was gone for 3.5 days. By then, I was already signing a lease for a tiny studio apartment above a Thai restaurant downtown. The radiator hissed like an angry cat, and the smell of peanut sauce and basil was perpetual, but it was mine. On Thursday evening, my phone finally buzzed. A text from my mom, "Hey, where did you put the spare HDMI cable? Chloe wants to hook up her laptop to the living room TV." Not, "Where are you?" Not, "We haven't seen you." An HDMI cable. I sat on my $150 futon, staring at the blank TV until it went dark. Then I typed, "I moved out and I have no idea where the cable is." An hour later, the assault began. 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. All went to voicemail. When I finally listened, it was exactly what I expected. Mom sounded upset, but she called me dramatic and ruining the family dynamic. The voicemail I remembered most was from my dad. He sounded utterly bored. "Caleb, this silent treatment thing is childish. Your mother is stressed. Call us when you're done throwing your little tantrum." I saved that voicemail. I didn't reply. I plunged headfirst into corporate finance, landing a junior analyst position at a high-pressure wealth management firm. The hours were brutal, but I loved it. Numbers made perfect sense. Spreadsheets showed no favoritism. A balance sheet didn't care if you were the golden child or the glass child. It only cared if you were right. Marcus, my direct supervisor, was brilliant and fearsome, demanding perfection and communicating mostly through sharp nods. But it was Vance, the senior vice president, who changed everything. He was personable, razor-sharp, and saw everything. After 3 months, Vance called me into his glass-walled office. "You don't talk much, Caleb," he observed, swirling a glass of sparkling water. "But your models are flawless. You see risks before they happen." Why? Before I could stop myself, the words just tumbled out, because I grew up having to anticipate everything without anyone helping me. Vance just stared, then a small smile formed on his face. "Good. Use that. Hunger makes you sharp. Comfort makes you stupid." Vance became the mentor my father never was. He dragged me into high-stakes client meetings, taught me how to negotiate, how to leverage pain, how to read a room. By 25, I was a portfolio manager. By 26, I was earning more than my father ever had in his prime. I bought a sleek, modern condo with a river view. I rebuilt my wardrobe from scratch. Brick by excruciating brick, I built myself up. It was also around this time I met Sienna. She was a graphic designer for a marketing firm in my building. We kept running into each other at the lobby coffee shop until one morning, the barista, Maya, accidentally handed us each other's orders, practically forcing us to talk. Sienna was brilliant, fiercely independent, and had an uncanny ability to spot a lie. When I finally told her about my family, I expected pity. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "They didn't deserve a front-row seat to your life anyway. You're the main event, Caleb. Never let them relegate you to the nosebleeds again." She was right. She is the reason I'm here. In those 3 years, my family only tried to break through once. I was 26 when my mom, miraculously, found out where I lived and surprised me in my condo lobby. I stepped out of the elevator, and there she was, looking older than she should, clutching her pocketbook. "Caleb," she shrieked, trying to pull me into a hug. I stepped back, my body rigid. What do you want, Mom? My icy demeanor seemed to genuinely surprise her. Chloe's turning 24 next week. We're renting out a venue downtown. She really wants her big brother there. It's time to stop this silly grudge. My jaw tightened. A venue for a 24th birthday? How are you affording that? She waved a dismissive hand. Your father took out a small loan. It's an investment in her brand. Anyway, you need to be there. We're family. I looked at this woman, the one who'd left me cold pizza on the most significant day of my life, and felt absolutely nothing. No rage. No grief. Just clinical detachment. I won't be there, I said, clearly and calmly. Do not come to my home again. If you do, I will have security escort you out. I turned and walked out through the revolving doors, not looking back. That was the last I saw of her before the empire fell. It was exactly 3 years and 2 months after I left that house when I got the call. A gloomy Tuesday evening. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the area code. I was in my office, reviewing a merger document, and answered on speakerphone. Caleb. It was Chloe. All her performative confidence seemed to have drained from her voice. It was shaking. What is it, Chloe? I asked, continuing to type, not missing a beat. It's Dad. He lost his job. He's been hiding it for 6 months. He was laid off, Caleb. He blew through his severance. He maxed out all the credit cards to keep paying for my apartment and my brand trips. And Mom's clinic cut her down to part-time. She was hyperventilating now. The bank is foreclosing on the house. They have 30 days. They're going to be homeless. I stopped typing. Complete stillness filled my office. My father, the man obsessed with his reputation, who'd maintained a lavish lifestyle to keep his golden child shining, had financially imploded. Why are you calling me? I said, my tone dangerously calm. Because you work in finance. You have money. Mom saw your LinkedIn. Caleb, you're a director now. You have to help them, please. A freight train of cosmic comedy slammed into me. The glass child. The dormant son. The kid who was told to take the bus was now the only one who could save the king and queen from the guillotine. I'll look into it, I said. Then I hung up. I hesitated about writing a check immediately. I wasn't a martyr, nor was I a pushover. I went to see my therapist, Dr. Aries. I laid it all out, how I hadn't even made a dent in my portfolio, how I absolutely had the funds to pay off their arrears and save the house. Dr. Aries adjusted her glasses. But do you want to? I don't want them out on the street, I admitted honestly. I'm not a monster. But if I just hand them cash, nothing changes. They learn nothing. I just become their ATM. She leaned forward. So, take the emotion out of it. Treat it like a business transaction. What is the smartest financial and psychological move? That evening, I had a conversation with Vance. I explained that my parents' house was a distressed asset. Vance, with a piercing grin, made a few calls to his contacts in distressed debt. Within 48 hours, I knew exactly who held the mortgage, how much was owed in arrears, and how much principal was outstanding. I didn't give my parents money. I bought the debt. Through an LLC I specifically set up for this, I purchased the mortgage from the bank at a modest discount. I paid off the arrears. The house my parents lived in was no longer legally owned by the bank. It was legally owned by me. 2 weeks later, I drove my Audi into my old neighborhood. Sienna was in the passenger seat, holding my hand, exuding a serene, deadly calm. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked pitiful. The gutters drooped, the yard was overgrown, and Dad's leased Mercedes was conspicuously absent. I walked up to the front door and knocked. A full minute passed. My mom opened it, looking 10 years older, hair unwashed, wearing a dirty bathrobe. The moment she saw me, she burst into sobs and tried to hug me. I stopped her, grasping her shoulders. Let's go to the living room, Mom, I murmured, my voice icy. Dad was on the couch, watching TV, looking utterly defeated and hollowed out. Chloe sat on an armchair, nervously chewing her thumbnail. When I walked into that room, in my fitted suit, Sienna standing tall beside me, the power dynamic shifted so dramatically you could almost hear it shatter. Caleb, Dad croaked, not meeting my eyes. You came. I did, I replied, not sitting. I stood by the hearth, looking down at the three of them. I heard about the foreclosure. It's a misunderstanding, Dad blustered weakly, a faint echo of his former pride. The market shifted. My company made some unfair cuts. You hid it for 6 months, I interrupted, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. You maxed out your credit to fund Chloe's lifestyle while your mortgage went unpaid. It's not a misunderstanding, Dad. It's incompetence. My father flinched as if I'd hit him. Mom started to cry louder. Caleb, please, she pleaded. You have a good job, Chloe piped up. We just need a loan. Just $50,000 to get the bank off our backs. We'll pay you back, I swear. I reached into my leather briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder, tossing it onto the coffee table. It landed with a satisfying thump. You don't need a loan, I said. Because the bank doesn't own this house anymore. Dad frowned, bewildered. What do you mean? I bought the debt. I watched the reality slowly wash over his face. My LLC purchased your mortgage from the bank. I paid the arrears. The foreclosure is canceled. There was a complete, utter hush for 3 seconds. Then, Mom let out a joyful cry, springing to her feet. Oh my God, Caleb. You saved us. You paid off the house. I knew you loved us, I knew, SIT down. I bellowed. The command was so sharp, so direct, she almost fell back onto the sofa. I didn't pay it off for you, I murmured, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. I own the debt. I own the house. You are no longer homeowners. You are my tenants. I opened the folder and slid a clear, legally bound document across the glass table. This is a lease agreement. You will pay me rent every month, calculated at exactly 15% below market rate, which is generous. If you miss a payment by more than 5 days, I will begin eviction proceedings. You will maintain the property. You will not take out any secondary lines of credit against my asset. And Chloe? Chloe startled, her eyes wide with horror. My eyes were fixed on hers. You are 24 years old. You will get a real job. You will pay 1/3 of this rent. If I find out Dad is going into debt to fund your Instagram account while living under my roof, I will evict all of you. Dad was trembling, his hands shaking excessively as he picked up the lease agreement. Caleb, son, you can't do this. We're your parents. You're treating us like a business transaction? I moved closer to the couch. Like an afterthought? Like a piece of furniture. I gestured to the couch. Do you remember my college graduation, Dad? He took a deep breath, looking down at the ground. I walked across that stage alone, I whispered, my voice suddenly breaking under the strain of 28 years of repressed sorrow. I came home to a house full of strangers celebrating Chloe's internet followers. I ate cold pizza alone in the kitchen while you grilled burgers outside. You left me a sticky note. You taught me that in this family, love is conditional, based on performance. Well, Dad, your financial performance was abysmal. So now we operate on my conditions. I leaned down, placing both hands on the coffee table, forcing him to look at me directly. Mom was crying into her hands. The way Chloe was staring at me made me feel like a stranger, which, to be honest, I was. I wasn't the calm kid who took the bus anymore. I had changed. I was the landlord. Sign the lease, I said, tapping the pen on the table. Take the lease, or I will proceed with the foreclosure myself, and you can pack your bags tonight. Dad picked up the pen. A tear splattered onto the characteristic line as he signed his name. Mom signed next, her hand shaking so terribly she could barely form the letters. Chloe signed last. I took the documents, transferred them back into my briefcase, and slammed the lid shut. Rent is due on the 1st of the month, I stated. Do not call me unless the house is literally on fire. I turned and walked out the door. Sienna followed, head held high. As we climbed back into the Audi, I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, my chest heaving. Sienna reached over, kissed my knuckles, and uncurled my fingers. You did it, she murmured. You're free. And I was. The massive iron vault in my chest finally opened, and the pressure that had been strangling me my entire life vanished. It's been over a year since that day. As promised, I act only as their landlord. My LLC receives their rent payment on the 1st of each month via direct deposit. I don't communicate with them. I don't visit for holidays. Through my personal network, Word got around that Chloe was forced to take a job as a shift manager at a retail store to meet her share of the rent, and Dad found a job managing a warehouse. 6 months after Vance's retirement, I was promoted to full partner in the firm. I'm 28. I have a clever, beautiful woman who loves me, a career that pushes me to my limits, and a life I've built entirely with my own 2 hands. Last night, cleaning up old digital files, I came across that preserved voicemail from my father, calling me childish for throwing a tantrum. My mouse hovered over the delete button. I didn't listen to it. I didn't need to. The boy made of glass who left that voicemail, hoping someone would finally look at him? He was gone. After deleting the message, I shut down the laptop and went to bed. So, what do you think? Did I go too far? Or was it the only way to finally be seen? I really want to know what you would have done in my place. Let me know in the comments below.